Welcome back to the Shabbat Treasures series. I'm Gila Ross, host of the Power Up podcast, and I'm here together with my co-host,
Rabbi Samuel Ross, and we are delighted to be able to share a weekly idea that you can take into your Shabbos and upgrade and beautify immediately. Enjoy.
We went through plowing, sowing, and now we are going to reaping is really harvesting. So I think that's what Hayden was saying. When you say you reap the benefit, it's you harvest the benefit. I don't know what the normal English word for it is, but it's cutting down. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, before you walk off and you think, you know what's that got to do with me? I'm not a farmer. I'm not reaping any.
Oh, come on. By now, they're all farmers, Gilla. We're pretty much farmers, right?
Well, yes. Okay.
Perhaps not. Okay.
Okay.
And we welcome Aaron with us. Really good to have you with us. We enjoyed having you and Nicola with us last week.
So as you may have seen from previous weeks, is that even though it's something that sounds a bit obscure when you hear the definition, there are places where it comes up in our regular city life. Okay. So things such as picking a plum, is that something that you'd be allowed to do on Shabbos? If you have a plum tree or an apple tree or a pear tree or something in your garden, are you allowed to pick a fruit off it to eat it on Shabbos?
And don't worry if you don't want to take a stab at any of these. Maybe say no, but we'll discuss the principles in a minute. So the first one is picking the plum.
What about walking on grass? Can I walk on grass? What could possibly be the problem with that? Keep that in mind as we keep going. What about using a hammock? Right, a hammock that's on trees.
Does anyone even have a hammock? You know what a hammock is even? We're not in the Caribbean here, right?
They use it in the rain. In the UK, right?
Yeah, it doesn't say, we're going to have to come up with another example. I'm thinking
that accent, I thought you said a hammer. I was looking at Stephen.
It's been that time of week.
Okay, we are definitely changing the example. The example is a tree house.
Or a tree swing, right?
Tree swing, tree house.
That you think. Can I ride a horse on Shabbos? Go horse riding. Can I smell a fruit on a tree on Shabbos?
Hey, Nicola's there. Welcome.
Hello.
We're so excited to have you with us, Nicholas. And what we're discussing tonight, again, we're not farmers, but some of the examples we're going to look at are picking a plum, walking on grass, using a tree swing, riding a horse, or smelling a fruit on a tree. Those are some of the examples that we're going to look at over the next 15 minutes or so. Let's define reaping. We always try and define what we're looking at. So reaping is the uprooting of a living plant or vegetation from its source of growth. Gila, do you want to say that in better, in a more...
In English?
Yes, I think that's what we were looking for.
So it can be an uprooting,
Darren's laughing.
And either it's basically cutting off a living thing from its source of growth. Right, so it can be.
Give us an example. Gila.
It can either be pulling out a plant from the ground, or it can be snapping a branch off a tree. Does anyone else want to give an example of something like that?
Pulling a leaf. Oh, sorry.
Pulling a leaf is a brilliant example.
Someone
Andrew
else
had something, I think. Andrew, were you going to say something?
Picking strawberries.
Okay, great.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So that's a really good example. So again, so I think we've actually managed to explain it. That it's the uprooting or severing of any living plant or vegetation. What's vegetation? Vegetation, okay. From
Something
its source
from
of growth.
The ground, like a vegetable. Okay, so I think we may have hinted at the answer to the first question, which was, can we pick a fruit from a tree?
No.
I think you can. How many?
No, cannot, because even though the tree is still going to stay on, but because the actual fruits, you're cutting it off from its source of growth, you would not be allowed to. So Hayden is actually correct with that. You would not be allowed to.
Because again, just to get clear, that is the growth, right? It's coming from the tree. That's its source.
But what happens if it's partially on the tree, but it's got no hope of actually growing? So
that's a good question.
If you have a look, some will be heavily attached and some might sort of a half dropped, or it might be not really attached.
Okay, so the half drop, good question. So even the things that are dropped, we're going to discuss towards the end. We're going to see that even that's a problem. Even if it's totally fallen off, fell off on Shabbos, that's also going to be a problem. But even if it was dead, you still can't pull it off. They're quite, like the Torah parameters are quite strict when it comes to taking something from its source of growth. Even if it's dead, even if it's falling off, we're still going to be out in any of those cases. Okay, guys? Okay, so that's pretty much where we're starting from. We got our classical example of Andrew's example of the strawberry, which is an example of the apple from the tree. Okay, but it's not just the apple from the tree, and it's not just the strawberry from the tree. But even if it's not coming from its original, like let's say a traditional type of ground. I'll give you an example. To remove moss from damp wood, that it would also be a problem. So it's not just the apple from the tree. Even to scrape the moss off the damp wood would also be a problem. Now we're going to go back to an example we used a couple of weeks ago. Gilla, maybe you want to speak about seeds from a jar of water. Again, we're doing almost the opposite of what we did 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, we spoke about making growth, right? The sowing. Now we're speaking about detaching it.
Right, so you would not be allowed to take a seed out of a jar of water because that's where it's sprouting, and by doing that, you're cutting off its growth.
Now we're going to ask them a question. We didn't even give this example earlier. What about lifting up a planted pot from soil? What do you say, Stephen? We're not talking about putting a planted pot down. We're talking about lifting the planted pot up.
No, because you're moving the earth, aren't you?
Right, but you know what?
Is
right.
In the house or out the house?
Does it have holes in the bottom or not?
Right, so it's a good question. Once you're outside, I don't know if it's going to make that much of a difference anyway. But let's assume right now we're outside in the grass. So again, that is really the problem. You are uprooting it from its original source. When we speak about original sources, you think about, and I'm not talking about catch up right now. You go all the way back to the beginning. What's the original source? Again, we're now doing number 3. We're doing melacha number 3, guys. Why are we even worried about any of this stuff? Like, why
the seeds in the soil?
Why are we even worried about this stuff? Like, who cares if we're detaching a plant from the ground? Like, what's the big deal? Let's do a little bit of revision here. Even in 60 seconds. What's the big deal?
It's alive and growing.
Great. And why is that a problem?
Because you're disturbing nature.
Okay, good. But let's look at the broader picture.
I missed the first one, so I don't know.
No, so I'm not being clear enough. So let me be a little bit clearer. We're going back to everything that we're discussing here is going back to our original Shabbos. That we have Shabbos that we keep, or we do the best that we can, or we try and grow into keeping it. Ultimately, as we saw in our very first session, it's always good to do a bit of revision, something so important. It's the source of blessings. All our blessings come from Shabbos. It is the root, it is the foundation of our belief. That's what Shabbos is. So what we're discussing, whether it's muktzah or whether it's reaping, what is cooking, it's all coming back to Shabbos. It's the foundation of our belief. Okay? Okay, next. Okay, let's discuss walking on grass. Gonna give the example of walking on grass. What do you say, guys?
I'll say yes, it's fine.
It depends how you walk on the grass, whether you
as long as you don't break it.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so that's good. So what would you expect? Would you expect to break it or not?
No.
Okay, so I think that's fair.
So that is.
You could push it down, but it wouldn't necessarily break.
Right, so I think that's fair. Under most normal circumstances, you're not going to break it. So under what circumstances might you break the grass? What do you think, Bev? When might you break the grass?
Uproot the grass.
Uproot the grass.
If you kick it.
Good. So who would ever kick grass? Like, hello?
Kids.
Kids, maybe adults who are playing contact sports, maybe adults who are running around in long grass or long wet grass, maybe walking on delicate plants could uproot it. So I think, as Darren was saying, it does depend on the circumstance. So to walk in grass is fine, but by the time you're running in it, I think, or playing heavy contact football, that's going to be a little bit, it's going to be tougher.
So what you're saying is that you can walk on the grass, that's not a problem because it's not inevitable. But running, football, kicking, or walking
My
on
wa-
delicate grass is
harder.
going to be a problem.
Definitely there's going to be longer grass. Yeah.
All right.
It's going to be problematic.
You can play football on the grass.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
You just got to be careful. You got longer grass, and it's definitely going to get kicked out and stuff.
Your garden's all right.
Not inevitable. You're going to be okay. Once you're kicking and it's longer grass, you're getting yourself into trouble. Yeah, you're getting yourself into trouble. Again, I think the cutoff maybe is longer grass. You won't find me playing football on grass on Shabbos. I'm going to be a little bit more nervous about it. But okay, let's look at the stats, as Darren said, as it comes. We're going to have one end of the spectrum, the walking on the grass, to the other end of the spectrum, the hard kicking of into long wet grass.
So Reva, can I ask, sorry, so can you play football then? Could you play a football match on Shabbos?
It's a hard one. It's really a hard one. If it's inevitable that the grass get kicked out when you're kicking it, you got a problem.
But is that
What if
the
it's on
only reason why
AstroTurf?
you wouldn't be able to?
AstroTurf
Yeah, what
is-
if it's on AstroTurf? Yeah.
AstroTurf's
AstroTurf
definitely
is
fine.
100% fine. That's absolutely fine.
and
So that is, if you've got AstroTurf at home and you've got fake grass, then you're good. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah. And I think there
When
is.
you're in an error.
Yeah, okay, but I think there's a difference between you kicking,
Exactly.
Hayden, you're kicking the ball around with no on the grass, and 12, 6'1" teenagers kicking around at the grass. I think there's a difference there.
Hayden said, can you play a football match? By that, does he mean scoring in competition as opposed to just kicking it around leisurely? Surely that makes a difference.
I think it probably does. If you're just passing it from one to the other, that's going to be okay. I don't think you're necessarily going to kick it out there. But once you're kicking it hard, it's a different scenario. It's a different reality. You got to be the judge of that. If you think that it's likely to get kicked out from what you're doing, again, if it's long wet grass, you're going to have that. It's more problematic.
Yeah.
So is that the only law why you wouldn't be able to play a football match?
So I think this is what we're discussing. It's an issue of kicking out the grass. It's the same problem if you're running in long wet grass, you're also going to knock it out. I think it really depends what the grass is.
Okay. Because I must be honest, I thought you couldn't, for example, play a football match, but I thought it was more to do with, I don't know, the competition or scoring goals. I didn't think it was anything to do with whether you
there
play
might be other issues as well. There might be other potential issues as well. And we've seen in the past, if you potentially upsets, if you're upset, that could be a potential issue. But let's say you're not going to be such a bad loser. I think it's probably in terms of owning Shabbos, it's sort of enjoying Shabbos. You could play a game, you could play a sport, with a kid or whatever it is. But the challenge, again, if it's outside the eruv, so even if you kick it, it's the same as carrying it. So you've got a problem there. But the kicking out of the grass potentially is the real issue.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, again, I think it does depend on circumstances. Okay, maybe one final one for now, Gilla. This is our favorite one: kicking the pollen-laden dandelion. Has anyone ever done that?
Yes, definitely done it. Would you be allowed to do it on Shabbos?
No.
Now we've got these principles, it's a problem, right? Because the pollen's going to become detached. Okay, so I want to quickly review what we've done, and then we're going to see that this is actually, for us, this is a fairly unique melacha, a fairly unique one of the works, because there is so much rabbinical stuff that's connected with it. This is pretty much what we've done so far. Maybe I'll take a quick revision and get into some of the rabbinical stuff. We've seen that reaping is really uprooting or severing a plant or vegetation from its source of growth. So this is going to include pulling fruit out of a tree. It's going to include moss from damp wood. It's going to take a plotted plant from soil. It's going to include running on grass and like heavy or something like that. Okay, so now we're going to see, Gitta's going to guide us through three different areas that were so closely connected to the concern of pulling out vegetation that the rabbis, already from thousands of years ago, forbade we're going to look at four different elements. that the rabbis, as a result of this, forbade. So again, maybe.
Okay, so first one is using a tree. Okay, now what's the concern there? So the concern is that by using a tree, we would break off a part of the tree while we're on it. Okay, so therefore a tree is muksa the tree is muksa to lean on. So can anyone think of an example?
I think, by the way, again, I think we're shocking the people here. Did you hear that? A tree is muksa. Now we think about tree houses. And I think we ought to like sort of slow down.
So 1 minute. So by muksa, we mean a muksa to move it, not to touch it. So you're allowed to touch the tree if you're walking past it, but leaning your body on it where it's going, like fully leaning on it, where it might move it, would be a problem.
Again, this might be a shock to people, but trees, because again, the rabbis were so concerned about pulling out the.
So Rabbi, why don't you tell us what sort of activities would be okay and what would not be okay on the tree?
So for our purposes, there's actually very few that are okay. There are 1 or 2 which I'm not going to go into tonight, which are like it's like far away removed. But once you start getting into anything that's connected to a tree, whether it's a hammock, whether it's a tree swing, whether it's even putting your hat or your jacket on a tree, it's all out. Tree houses, they're all gone. Trees are like no-nos on Shabbos. To the extent that rabbis actually thousands of years ago made a fascinating penalty that anyone that especially went up was supposed to stay up there for the rest of Shabbos. Situations, you think I'm joking? They gave a penalty. Yeah, if someone needs the bathroom, they can come down and it gets snowy, etc. But they actually gave a penalty for it.
It sounds tempting. I'll climb up the tree until
Spend Shabbos up a tree.
Oh, I shouldn't have told you that one.
It's brilliant idea.
Yeah. So trees.
We've got no trees in our garden. Damn.
Don't worry, I have plenty.
I'm coming round.
Yes.
No idea. Just remember, going up the tree is forbidden. So
we'll be there. We'll see you there.
Yeah. Okay.
Friday.
Are we allowed to come back down if we get up there before Shabbos?
If I recall correctly, I don't think so. I think once you're up, I think you're in trouble. Anyway, so the first thing that the rabbis added was the tree. Gila, you've shocked them about the tree. You want to give them the second shock?
Right. So the second one is using an animal. Okay. So the rabbis were concerned that if someone is riding an animal, they would snap off a branch or a stick or something to prod the animal. So so Rabbi, why don't you tell us what's okay, what's not okay when it comes to using animals? Good
question. So again, in case I don't know how many of you do horse riding anyway, or maybe some of your kids do, I don't know, but that's out because again, the same sort of thing. They were concerned.
Not on Shabbos.
On Shabbos, it's out. It's out. They're concerned that you were going to rip off, as Gil was saying, rip off a stick, and it's part of the same thing. Just like we're concerned going up a tree, we're also going to be concerned with riding an animal. Riding an animal is out, I'm afraid. Okay.
What about walking an animal?
Oh, you're talking about in terms of, let's say, to walking a dog or something like that. So the truth is, we will get to animals later in the course, but right now we're not discussing the walking of an animal. We're discussing actually physically being on an animal and riding it. Okay. There are some issues attached with let's say owning a dog, but there are ways to get around it as well. In terms of the lead and the leash and so on and so forth. But we're discussing right now the riding of it. So there's 2 final rabbinic decrees that they made. One was smelling a fruit on a tree. Again, for the same reason, we're worried you're going to pick it. We're not allowed to smell a fruit that's on a tree. And finally, actually, Darren asked this one earlier, Gila.
A fruit that fell off a tree on Shabbos. It's muksa.
So if you know it fell off the tree, then we
on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Then it's muksa.
Next week we're going to have a look at what happened. If it fell off before Shabbos. But this week we're looking at fell off on Shabbos. Again, let's.
Oh, right. Okay. So only if you know that it fell off the tree on Shabbos. If it fell off before and you pick it on Shabbos.
Good question.
Okay.
Good question. So that we'll look at a bit next week because that comes a little bit into melacha 4. Right now we'll do number 3. Good question. So in just a couple of minutes, let's very quickly do a revision. I'm going to do a quick revision on the basic topic, and then Gil will quickly run through the rabbinic ordinances of this one, which probably are actually longer than the biblical ones. So we're staying away from reaping. Reaping is one of the 39 forbidden works, which again is linking all the way back into Shabbos. We keep Shabbos because it is our treasure. Hashem has promised us with wealth and with blessings and everything if we keep Shabbos. It's the foundation of our belief. And how much of that only comes into this week's parasha when we speak about Parashas Yisro, getting of the Torah. Okay, so we're not doing anything which is detaching fruit, vegetables, or any of those types of things from its original source. No fruits off tree, no plants out of the ground, no running on long grass, things like that. So that's the basic biblical concept. Now, in terms of the 4 rabbinic ones that we looked at.
What were the 4 rabbinic laws that we learned that were connected to reaping?
Don't go up a tree.
Yep.
Okay,
that
great.
was
So,
the first one, was
great.
using a tree, which would include climbing, leaning against it, sitting on one, etc. And other 3 was anyone remember?
Animals.
Riding
Using
an animal.
Exactly. Riding an animal. Riding an animal. Exactly. Anyone else
Picking
remember
a
something to do
Fruit
with
that had fallen.
Fruits that are fallen. Yeah.
That is muksa. The last one that no one yet said was smelling a fruit that's on a tree.
Let's quickly say what the 4 are, just to finish up.
Using a tree, riding an animal, smelling a fruit that's on a tree, and a fruit that has fallen off on Shabbos is muksa.
So again, there's probably quite a few things tonight that you weren't necessarily heard of before, couldn't believe and imagined, were included under one of the melachas, part of Shabbos. But there you go, and that's enough fun for tonight. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Firstly, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to those of you that have reached out and told me how much you're enjoying and benefiting from this series. It means so much to me, because sometimes when you're recording a podcast, it feels like you're talking to yourself. So when I hear from those of you that are reaching out just to let me know how much you're enjoying, it means so much to me. Thank you so much.